Welcome back to another sunny day on What Have You. I'm Rachel Jankovic.
I'm Becca Merkel.
And we gather together once more to
in the car.
Force out a podcast.
We basically stopped getting further afield than Rachel's front yard.
We don't even buy coffees anymore.
No.
We just sort of, if there's a beverage on hand, that's how fancy this outing is.
We're parked in front of her driveway.
Today I told Shadrach, though, you can't come ask me a question. Just hot tip. Because
yeah, last time, in the last
I wonder
one,
if he will. He doesn't, it's hard for him to know that could be the case, that you don't come talk to Mom right now.
Yeah.
Like, surely she's available. She's open 24/7. I always have a question.
I know. I feel like last week didn't you go kind of blank?
Yeah, I did, because I was gesturing at him for a minute. Like, wait, Chad, I'll tell you about that later. Usually they ask if they could have. He's like wants to know if he could have an apple, but he's the man of real questions. Last night, some of the questions we got from him is, what does the electricity place do? I was like, well, he's like, with all the wires. Like, it was like one of those places on the side of, you know, out by the Troy Highway? It's like chain link.
Oh,
like,
sure.
that's what it, and like, I don't even know the name of it. It's like, it's not a power plant. It's just one of those places where there's all these wires and transformers
the kind of place
and
that
stuff.
has, like, danger,
Well, it's
stay
what
back
I would call the
signs.
electricity place. Yeah. And he's like, what does it do there? I'm like, So we went on a week binge. This was a little while ago, but of needing to talk about cannibals 24/7 with him. And
see, he's 4, right? And
he's 4. Yeah.
I
He's a
have
man of deep
often
thinking.
felt, I have said this before, but Dorothy Sayers and her, you know, breaking down the child's
Paul
development.
Pert and poetic.
Yeah,
The
Paul
philosophical
Parrott,
4-year-old.
I feel like she missed philosophical, which comes at 4. I feel like 4 years old, I remember having to get into, but why did God harden Pharaoh's heart?
Yes. It's like, but I need the big answers.
Yeah, and I loved, like, trying to
with
get
limited
into
vocab.
it. Yeah, limited vocab, huge concepts. Let's walk through predestination and free will, and how do we reconcile
and let's
the
do
two?
it in a way that will satisfy
With
my
a
4-year-old.
And then Knox would be like, but if God hardened Pharaoh's heart, why did Pharaoh get in trouble?
And you're like, hang on now.
Let's go through Romans 9, shall we?
I'm like, well, let me teach the world to you, my son. So Shad was asking about cannibals. I'm not actually sure why he was asking about cannibals. I can't remember the initial thing. It was about a missionary, I'm pretty sure. You know, it was something. And he was like, but that doesn't exist still, does it, Mom? And I'm like, yeah. Like, we're talking about it, like, yeah. But it ended up being a really fun thing that for him, like, we were talking about real darkness in places and say, how do you get rid of the darkness? And it was like, only with light, like that Jesus is the light of the world. And this is how, when there's really terrible, scary places. And then, I showed him the Peace Child, the 50 years after the Peace Child video. Like the whole video about them all being headhunters and, which if you have not seen that, YouTube, 50 years after Peace Child, such a good video of him going back to the tribes that used to be headhunting all the time. And then now there's a ton of old people because they no longer are killing each other all the time.
Wow.
They have old people for the first time. They're all like, there's a baptism in the video of a ton of people being baptized, and it's just so obvious. That's transformation. Awesome. And he really got that. Like, but he needed the answers about how did this happen in the first place?
Yeah.
How does it quit? Why is it still happening?
Yeah.
We're talking about the Great Commission. We're like, we gotta cover the waterfront. And then right after that, he found a book about World War II or something. One day he's like, Mom, would you tell me the rest of World War II? I was like, where did I leave off last time? And then he's like, how can you tell who's a bad guy? Is it their helmets? And I was like, no. And
occasionally, yes.
And then he's like, are American soldiers good guys or bad guys? I'm like, well, some of each.
And we had this moment where we were visiting friends in Amsterdam. And so the kids were all little. And we ended up going to, now, of course, I can't remember her name.
Anne Frank.
Anne Frank's house. But
I can remember.
But we didn't know that was really on the agenda for the day.
Right.
Like, we were just visiting. We were in Amsterdam. Well,
Like-
they didn't live in Amsterdam. They took us to Amsterdam for the day. And so
Right.
one of the things we did was go to Anne Frank's house. And so we get in there, and I hadn't prepared the kids. We hadn't really ever talked about the Holocaust just yet with all of them.
And all of a sudden you're like, hang tight now, kids.
And the thing that was really funny was trying to do that in a whisper with those kinds of questions. So we're in, there's,
Yes.
there's crowds. You can't be like talking loudly. It was dark. They had big photos on the walls of the concentration
Yeah.
camps and stuff. So whatever child it was, little, is going, why are all those people laying down? And so we're in a whisper, yeah, it's bad. And they'd be like,
We'll talk later.
Why would the Germans, And you're like, okay, well, because, and they'd say, so the Jews were the Christians then. And we're like, no,
Nah.
Jews aren't Christians. So
Yeah.
so the Jews are the bad guys. No, Jews aren't the bad guys. But, And you're trying to do
Right.
this in this whispering, like, so the Germans are the Christians. And you're like,
No,
yes, well, technically, it's,
it's complicated. That's why we brought you to this museum.
they may have all been Lutherans, but that doesn't actually mean...
But this is the difference between the visible church and the invisible church. And I'd like to talk to you more about that some other time.
And just because the Jews aren't Christians doesn't mean that they should have been killed.
We're driving.
Oh, boy.
Speaking of the Jews, and just because they weren't doing well doesn't mean that. I had the other day I'm driving, all the kids packed in the back. They've been talking a lot, and it became apparent when I suddenly clued in that I had not been paying attention to what they were talking about. Like they were just all talking. I was driving, my mind was elsewhere. And then I suddenly hear, no, Blair, don't say that. You should not say that. And I was like, what? What's happening?
Right.
Like, why is someone... And it really made me laugh. Blair is my 7-year-old. So
Right.
the follow-up, I suddenly tune in to, no, Blair, you should not say that. And then it was because even though, let's see how this works. Like, even though the Jews had a lot of problems, it was super wicked of them to make them eat pork. And I was like, what? Like, and they were like, it was in the intertestamental period.
Yeah,
this is
right.
what I hear from the back of the car.
And it's like,
Blair,
the Seleucid
no.
dynasty.
I was like, I have to explain this to you, Blair. Stop, Blair. Stop saying it was good they made them eat
Like,
pork.
let's talk about Antiochus Epiphanes.
Yes,
the
that's what
Fourth.
they were. That's what it was. Let me tell you some more about the abomination
Yeah.
of desolation. And
my
I was
word.
like, wow, heady topics for the back of the car. I should tune in more often
I know.
for this.
Keeping fresh on your history.
Yeah, nothing like kids to keep you really...
Oh, man.
And the other thing is telling them Bible stories. It is a really weird mental thing where you realize when you read a Bible story, it's so familiar that you don't notice how much of it you don't know.
Yeah.
But when you go to tell it, you're like, I can't remember the order that these events happened in. Like, I would know it if someone else said it and it was wrong.
Right.
I would probably notice it. But it's like
Yeah.
a mental lapse.
Or even you just start noticing it yourself. It makes you think about it yourself in a different way when you have to put it
But
in
I have to
words.
go open up the Bible and look at the story because I start wondering, when you're putting it in words, you start wondering, you start being like, is that the
Yeah.
case or did I fill that in myself? Like, did I
Sure.
assume that happened? Or,
Yeah.
because I actually just had this with my kids are reading Daniel and one of them said something. Of course, I haven't looked at it to confirm this, but they were questioning me. It was like someone said there at the beginning, and they said, is this the book that has Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? And I was like, oh yeah, it is. And they were like, well, how did they know Daniel? And I was like, oh, well, Daniel is who introduced them to, I was saying Daniel is how they became known, wasn't he? Like
I don't think so.
I thought so. I thought it was like because he somehow.
No. Now we're going to
Well,
have to pull out
I
our
know.
phone apps.
I just brought this on the podcast to show you all. But then I had kids being like, no, they lived in Babylon. And I was like, yes, I know, but I thought that the reason that they became like overseers, right? Is this not the case? They were.
I think you might be filling in some gaps there.
That's my point, though. My point is that you're like,
you
read it and
Daniel
it's
was
familiar, and then when you go to tell it to people, you're like, hang on, this is, I don't know. I find this tricksy. Do you know all the ins and outs with Haman and what happened next? You know, how many feasts were laid in order?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's tricksy. No.
So, aside from having big philosophical talks with Shad, what else have you been up to?
And finding out what I don't know about the Bible.
Right.
What else have I been up to?
Yeah, what have you been doing amongst
I
yourself?
actually gave myself last night I threw 2 large pottery things, which I have not done before with that much. Well, no, I've not successfully done it with that much clay.
Okay.
That was fun. A big serving dish.
Have you fired them? No, you have to dry.
But the funny part is that when I stood up, like, my legs were tight and my arms were tight and my back, it was like probably all of these very obscure muscles that you don't normally do anything with. Like, because centering that much clay takes a lot of, like, I think I was even holding my breath trying to center it, you know, because you're like trying to lock down this piece of clay that's like the size of a coffee can.
Right.
You know, and when it gets a hip swivel going.
You got a muscle.
You're like wrestling this large piece of clay as it's like spinning around. So that was a fun thing to do, though. I was glad. I've lately only done mugs and stuff that was little because of, you know, I've
just because.
No, well, yes, but also just because we didn't have that much clay on hand, but also because I just wanted to keep doing the same thing and get consistent results at the same thing. And so it was fun to switch. I made a big, cool bowl, but my husband has much bigger hands and much better strength at this kind of thing than me. So, meanwhile, he's throwing these bowls that are like ginormous. Like, what I was really pleased with was much smaller than
medium
what he's
size.
doing, yeah.
That's very fun.
But I made it shallower and wider, like a better serving dish. Like, you know, if you had like a finished pasta dish or something, you don't want to serve it in a deep bowl.
Right. Well, I really want to do more slip casting. I would really like to do it this summer. I enjoyed that a lot. The problem is I would like to get good at making the original piece that you make a mold of, because so far you just kind of have to find a thing that's the right shape and make a mold of it. And so that was fun the first time, but I would really like to design it and then make a mold and then do the slip casting. That's the thing I would really like to do. But I think
throw it or like slab build it.
Well, I think the way they do it is make it out of like an MDF with a lathe.
Oh,
you know, where you design it.
Well, you don't have to. You could do it out of anything. Anything you
can
make a mold of.
But I was trying to think. I know, but I was thinking with clay, it would be so dense that it would take like a year to dry. I don't know, like, you know, like if you're doing something this big.
Well, I think traditionally people would have just thrown the item.
Oh, yeah, but
you're talking about sculpting clay to make.
No, I'm talking about sculpting MDF with a lathe to make it.
Do you have
what
a lathe?
I wanted? No, I don't.
I would like to see you try to just wield a lathe. Here's the thing. I think it's probably a lot like a potter's wheel, because I bet you anything that
it just spins and it has the blade that you know, like you have. I think people we shouldn't be talking about this. Why are we talking about this?
No, here's
layering
what I'm trying
MDF
to say.
with glue and then
putting
it on a lathe.
It's kind of like making a wood euro.
Basically, yeah, but then it's solid all the way through, and then of course the slip is what makes it hollow. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So you've been casting pots.
Nope.
Yes, you have. Not casting, throwing. You've been throwing pots.
Yes.
I have to leave in the morning to go to Pittsburgh for the ACCS conference. And look who forgot to turn the ringer off.
That's my ringtone, guys. That's my ringtone.
But
a number I don't recognize.
So I'm going to ACCS tomorrow, and I have to speak in a workshop on Friday, and so that's happening. But then that evening, this is where my life gets complicated. I have to host a party of sorts in another city in a hotel suite that I've not seen before, and obviously I can't bring along with me. They're handing out a lot of invitations for this. I think it's for a party for about 100 people, but I have to do this from across the country. So that's what my planning is
Right.
in that phase right now. Like, what do I need to throw in my suitcase so that I have it? And what do I need to put on my list for things to try to find in Pittsburgh?
I feel like you should find a Costco would be helpful, but also Trader Joe's. I bet, because they.
Oh yeah, and I'm not worried about the food because of course we can find a grocery store somewhere. It's just mostly like, and then prepping whatever it is. I'm gonna have to prep it all.
See now if you can borrow a lathe in
Yes.
Pittsburgh and
Yes,
make
and
a centerpiece
I'll
out of
come with
MDF,
MDF.
and you will be so more
I'll be
educated
blessed.
when you come
I'll
home.
be blessed to have done that.
Yeah, that'll work.
Anyway, so I'm thinking, right, what do I need to have on hand? Like, I'll bring, I don't know. So that's my little conundrum for the afternoon is, what do I put in my suitcase if I'm going to have a party for 100 in another city?
My conundrum today is that we are actually going to go to the river today.
Oh yeah,
Like, we should do that.
Rachel's gonna go to the river today, and I betcha they're not gonna Merkle it. I bet they're gonna just have a nice little.
Well, our plan is to specifically not Merkle it. our plan is to go and come back in relative expected times.
You know what though? Our sheetrocker at our house. It's amazing what somebody who's good at their job. It's amazing. It's like, gosh.
I told the kids, because you guys were gone, coming home late, I was like, so for Father's Day, you've got to find something that you could do that would be a gag about the sheetrock.
You told my children this?
Yeah, it was like a Father's Day gag about what was happening with the sheetrock, but apparently they didn't think of anything.
No, they didn't. But
so
it's amazing. It's just,
I feel like
so
we should
exciting.
tell about Grandpa, because that was so cute.
Sure.
So my Grandpa Jim is a limerick writer.
He always just put a limerick in birthday cards.
Oh,
for the
like your
kids.
wedding card, we would get a limerick in it.
I didn't get a limerick.
He dusts out a limerick
He wrote
for
me an
many
awesome
occasions.
letter for my wedding.
I have a lot of really great letters from him too, but he and Grandma Bessie they do the same, where I have like a letter when Lena was born, like a letter to Lena saying, you may not remember us when you
I
like
remember
those
that
just
letter.
choked me up so bad. He's always saying, it's basically like, this is what I want you to know, even though you may not remember us, but luckily she will remember him. Anyways, he writes limericks a lot. And so for Father's Day, we were just getting together. It was my dad's birthday and Father's Day, so but Grandpa was, somebody's gonna bring Grandpa, so we were like, well, he can't be at a thing with, all of these descendants and not have a gift. But he's not easy to shop for.
No.
He's not someone that needs a lot of stuff right now. So we decided to all write limericks for Grandpa. So I picked up a card, and then all of the family were off writing limericks. And I called, the Merkles were on the road, so I called them, and they...
we wrote up a limerick.
They wrote a limerick. I just discovered it's like a hot day, and I just realized that my seat heater was on. That's
no doubt a leftover from earlier this
put
morning.
me out of fellowship with this. I was like, man, it's getting so hot in here. So, anyways, but everybody wrote a limerick. Well, I don't know how many people wrote a limerick, but quite a lot, because it was Luke and I did one, and then all of our kids mostly did them, and then the Wilson kids, so that's 5 more kids, and your kids, the 5 kids did it, and then Mom and Dad, and then Gordon and Meredith, and little Heather and Mallory and Caleb. Like, so it seemed like 20 limericks all on postcards in his card. And then the awesomest part is that as he rolled in, as they brought him in, he's in a wheelchair, and as the guys carried him upstairs and put him down, like, first thing he's like, everyone, I need your attention. Like, I have a limerick to read for Dad's birthday. So
That's awesome.
he like arrived with a limerick to his own limerick party, but then
went home with 20 limericks.
Yeah, but then Dad read them all aloud, and then for him, like, he read them aloud, and then Grandpa said, "Well, I can die a happy man." A glut of limericks
What
in his
was
honor.
your limerick? Tell me your limerick.
Oh, I'll see if I can remember it. We intentionally blew the form at the end, which made us laugh.
Oh, okay.
So we said, let's see, There once was a house on Howard through whose doors many souls shuffled and cowered. They've, let's see, it was something about, it's about in that, hang on, give me a second to think of it. Something about an abundance of grace they found in that place and a missionary biography for the road.
Ours
Something
was,
like that.
Here was ours. There
Oh yeah,
once
you
was-
have yours in a
my
copy.
phone.
Yeah.
There once was a fellow who taught on bitterness rather a lot. He stuck to the text, and whatever came next, the implications were often too hot.
I love it.
That's so funny.
We just get a kick out of Grandpa's. The most fun part of it to me was that I was like, this is the perfect legacy, is that everywhere you went in the house, someone was writing a limerick.
Yeah.
Like everyone was like real quick, like Titus in the hall writing on a piece of paper up against the wall, and then people consulting and laughing and writing everywhere. I thought that was a real legacy, that
There you
somehow
go.
he turned out a whole family who would be like, yeah, limerick, I'll do that. I can handle
it's
a
Grandpa's
limerick.
love language.
It is. Limericks are like,
So, so what should we talk about though? This is we were talking earlier about lurching off the subject of limericks. About the vital importance, not of being earnest. I feel like I should say that. The vital importance of being earnest.
yeah.
Um,
Vital.
No, but of hearing both sides of the story. Like,
Yes.
in basically every
No,
department
I
of
would
life.
say one thing is, or if there's no way for you to hear the other side of the story,
then reserve
to always assume there
judgment.
is another side of the story.
Yeah, or just don't get dogmatic. So even like, I feel like how often when we were children, for instance, and we would be
we were
sent
young.
into the bedroom for discipline purposes.
Go wait.
Mom
on my
would
bed.
always, and this is a side note, but it was always great. This was such a great example because it meant that this is what we always did too. But I remember being sent to the bedroom, and Mom would wait a few minutes before she came in, and it was so that she could have her heart right, so that she wasn't disciplining.
She was never
him,
coming in the wrath.
She wanted to come in impartially.
Isn't that James? The wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God.
I always felt
like,
like you needed that
if you've
written
got
on
some-
your paddle.
Yeah, if you've got some wrath brouhahaing somewhere, you will not produce the righteousness of God.
In another person. Anyway,
Yeah.
so I remember sitting in there, sitting in the bedroom waiting. And the thing that was always noteworthy was that she always gave us an opportunity for the defense, or Dad, So they would come in and say, "Why don't you tell me your side?"
Right.
Because whatever it was, you know that feeling if you're getting called on something, you want the opportunity to give your side.
Yeah.
And most of the time, I'm sure it was not at all applicable. But if there was another piece to the story that they didn't know about, they wanted to hear it before,
Yes.
before taking action. And so, I just think it's hugely important raising children not to jump on one, land on one, scold one, until you actually have
Right.
heard both sides of the story or given a chance for the defense. But we were talking about this with regards to friends who tell you things about their husband or their
Right.
children.
Well, I actually think that Christians should be just really, really good at the lost art of imagining the other side.
Yeah.
And typically that happens when something happens to you. Like I don't know why that person did that, but maybe this was a really difficult day for them, and this was
Right.
not about, basically not taking offense, not whatever, and just being slow to react. Just
Right.
not being. I tell my kids all the time, it's like a thing that we have in our house because we have a fireplace. So if they ever have seen us throw tissue paper from a gift or something in the fireplace, how fast that lights up. And so we will talk about, we say, we don't want you to be like a big wad of Kleenex fluffed up on the floor where any spark that comes near will alight and up will go a blaze. We're my goal is for you to be like
The
big,
wet
wet, mossy
sponges.
logs where sparks go to die. Where the spark brigade comes through and nothing happens. It's just
Oh,
you
it's
cannot.
so true.
And part of it's being slow to wrath. Just not
Yeah.
being someone who was he said what? Like, I mean, and also a lot of it is a really bad instinct for counseling. If someone comes and brings a grievance to you, they are only telling you one side of the story, and they are also the only party that you have any access to.
Yep.
So why would you try to give them counsel of how bad what the other person did was? You know what I mean? Like, oh, let me reinforce your narrative, and let me just... And obviously, I always feel like we have to throw in these disclaimers. We're not talking about things where you should just call the police immediately or something when it's a really heavy accusation.
Point is that when you only hear one side of it, you don't know. Like,
Yeah.
you actually don't know the context. You haven't heard the other side. And so it's just that the like, okay, well, I'll just reserve judgment. I'm not going to jump in with a, oh my gosh, that's the most horrible thing.
Or you just can ask some clarifying questions. Or you can, sometimes, if someone brings something to you, I think it's super wise to say, I'm going to think about that. And I'll get back to you with some follow-up. Because by expanding the time zone for how you're going to deal with it, it allows for more time to explore the question in the first place. Like, okay, I had a question. Is this something,
But also, I think that the same thing, we're just talking about, like, reserving your own judgment. And you can just say, well, I think that that's a really bad situation. But I also am going to just acknowledge to myself that I don't have all the facts. So I need to hold that loosely. You can have an opinion, but just say, but I'm willing to be proved wrong if something else shows up.
Right.
Because that's the thing is women easily enter into stuff like that emotionally, where we get angry on behalf of somebody else.
Right.
We get sad on behalf of somebody else. And then you're not willing to let go of that if other evidence comes to light.
No, because you're actually already in an emotional state about it.
You're invested.
So you're like already mad at the guy before you hear his side. So why would you...
Right. And so the thing is like, maybe it is awful. It might be awful. Maybe it's not awful. Maybe somebody was having a fussy afternoon and then, like it could be anything. But also the ability to just wait and hear the other side of the story, I think, gosh, does the internet not provide multiple opportunities to practice this very thing. Where you read some inflammatory news article about the big bad thing that the cop did, or the big bad thing that the person did to the cop, whatever it is, and it's emotionally charged, it's politically charged, and we all know where our loyalties are going to be immediately without having seen really any more evidence about it, without having seen both sides of the story, without knowing anything except one person's take. And then, why is it now really hot? What's happening?
I don't know. I'm struggling here with the...
No, this is... Oh, it's because you turned it on to feet. See? And defrost. Rachel's fiddling with the... See? There we go.
Rachel's the worst.
Rachel is
just
like
doing the
twiddling
worst
with
things.
dials. No, but you know what I mean. Like hearing both sides of the story with your children, with your husband, with the internet, with your friends.
Well, and the internet, I'm just going to say, here's my hot tip for Christian women on the internet. Is... you don't actually have that much capacity for emotion. So let's just, this reminds me of, I want to say was it Dabney who said this about novels? I think it might have been.
I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember who it was.
I think it was Dabney. But anyways, he was talking about the dangers of novels. And, but he was saying that God gave us emotions to drive action. And that when we feel sorry for someone, it's like we feel sorry for them, so we go take them a meal. We feel concerned for someone, so we are driven to prayer for them.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of Christian emotion and action has been replaced by basically the gaper's delay of the internet.
Yeah.
Like where people are like, read this horrifying article about how a transgendered man and his transgendered child are doing something sick in Canada. And I'm like, I can't imagine that this is relevant for my life in any way. And that the emotion that would be ginned up in reading that article,
has nowhere to go,
which would be anger, would have nowhere to go because it would not be it's like, it's not in my bag. It's not something that is right here. And so you think about that when it is like, read this tale of medical tragedy from New Hampshire today. And you're like, I actually need to be caring for the people in my life who are here, who need me to be focused on their needs, which are not as great as the dying husband in New Hampshire.
And the thing is, like, I think that the the point is a really profound one, that emotion is meant to move you to action.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's impossible. Like, I don't have a problem with story, but we do think story is very effective, because by causing those emotions,
Mm-hmm.
it's shaping your loyalties, and
Right.
it's shaping, and so even if it doesn't have an outlet in that exact moment, it is shaping how you will react when confronted with it in real life. And so that's why it's important to be to act like a Christian even when you're just reading your Facebook feed,
Yeah.
because it's shaping you. It's shaping how
Right,
you
and
react.
I think that this quote I was talking about, he was arguing against like the French novels of the time, which I think were kind of like Harlequin romances.
Well, I'm sure there's
like it was a lot of,
plenty.
I think it was trashy novels, and this was before movies.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I just mean that Christians should take some of the wisdom of that. I'm
Yeah.
not saying I agreed with the whole moment, but the wisdom of the statement was kind of like, why do you think God wanted you to get used to not acting on your emotions? To not, like, when you fear for someone, you should be driven to constant prayer. Like, you should have, those emotions should take you somewhere, and they should motivate something. And I just think that that's an interesting, something to think about. And I just see it when I see people getting on different causes, like, where you're like, is there something that I can do? And I'm not saying that there's something wrong with political activism, or like, there's something I could do with this. But I just feel like I don't need to be whipping myself into a fevered wrath about the homeschoolers in Germany. Because like that could be a really hard time, and I hope that the Christians there are supporting them, or things are, you know what I mean? Like, but I don't see the way that my fervor here will do anything about it.
Yeah, and sometimes it is important to do things,
beyond your own
beyond your
emotional
own-
interest.
yeah.
I agree with that. It's not at all.
But mostly what I'm saying is just that if you're training yourself through your immediate loyalty on your Facebook feed, like you see something, you're just like, how dare he? I can't believe that disgusting cop would even ever think about.
Yeah.
If you do that, then
this is everything that's wrong in the world today, is this one man. And
right. But if you're the kind of person who sees one story and you snap to judgment, and then you snap to publicly stating what you think about it, then you aren't being the kind of person that Proverbs tells us to be, which is hear both sides of the story.
And not being
also,
quick to anger.
And
being like,
also one who meddles in a quarrel not his own.
Taking a passing dog by the ears. How
Such a
often, I've
great
thought
one.
that many times when I'm ready to whip off with a comment on something.
Yeah, and then
I'm
you're
like,
like,
actually,
this
that's
is not
not
my
even
fight.
my dog.
Not my
my
circus,
dog. Not my
not my
circus. Not my
monkeys.
monkeys.
But-
That's what Luke and I laugh. We say, isn't that like a Polish proverb? Not my circus, not my monkeys.
Yeah.
And we would say that often. Then we got tickled telling Dad, who is a pastor of many years, it's like, that's the trouble with pastors, is that for them, it's not my circus, not my monkeys. It's not my circus, some of my sheep. They're like, dang it, I do need to get involved in that circus to try to get some of the sheep out.
The thing is, though, is that like being somebody who waits to hear the other side, being somebody who reserves judgment, somebody who holds their judgments loosely until they have had 2 or 3 witnesses, is what the Bible asks us to have.
Right.
And I like also the 2 or 3.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes
Probably,
2, other times 3.
And this is something that's really interesting. That's the Bible's standard. And this is why marriage is big problems. because fights in private, you will never have 2 or 3 witnesses.
Well, there's always 2.
Kids. There's the kids.
No, there's 2. There's
I mean, if they're having counter testimony.
yes.
Who's going to bring in the witnesses to what?
Yeah.
It's like,
But there
that's
were
like
2
a special
people
problem.
who were there.
Right, I was going to say one other thing is what you
One
were
might
talking
be a
about.
false testimony, but
Yeah, when you were talking about the cultivating a demeanor that is wise in that, I would take it even further back and say, before you hear your own story. When, like, if you're feeling a
So
little
true.
peeved at your husband for something, you can tell yourself, you can build a case and generate the arguments, no problem with that. Like, if you want to spend your time doing the dishes, building all kinds of accusations that are one-sided against someone, you
verbally
can.
nap little
But if you want to
imputed
go,
motives.
but if you want to be wise, what you do is not listen to those unsubstantiated charges. Like, you're like, you know what? I'm going to wait until I hear the other side of that story. You know, like, I'm going to find this out.
Yeah.
before I proceed.
And before I get all snappy at my husband about whatever, do the thing that Mom did, which is wait and listen to the defense. Just wait
Yeah.
and hear if there's an explanation before leaping off.
We often
with
tell our
stuff.
kids, instead of saying, do you have something to defend yourself, we're often saying, I want you to tell me what you did wrong.
Yeah.
Like,
That's a good. That's
we're
a
like,
good
you
tip.
may not mention anyone else's names.
Well,
Like,
if you have two children squabbling and you weren't in the room, then
Yeah.
you can come in and say, now, Fred,
yeah.
Fred,
What did Fred do
Fred,
that was
you
not...
tell me the
yeah.
whole story, but only what Fred did wrong.
Yeah.
And,
And then...
Zanzibar over here will tell me only his part.
And if we get those two
And if
parts,
both
it'll
of
be
them-
the whole story.
It'll be the whole story.
Yeah.
But
That's
I love
amazing.
how kids are when when our kids were little. This would always crack me up because when they would start to retell the story in the flesh.
Yeah.
It would be like, and then I said to her, and then she screamed back, and then I quietly responded, and then she.
And then I was being totally fine. Like,
Yeah.
it was like, were you
I think-
angry?
but I always
No,
their
not
voice.
me. Yeah.
Their voice is very calm for my part,
Well,
and then.
And then...
And also the ramped up vocab. She screamed. She threatened.
The
whatever it was.
vocabulary. She was being amazingly horrible. You're like, really?
And so that's why if somebody is airing their grievance in the flesh, that's how it comes off.
Yeah.
And so when you say no, back up. Now you tell me everything you did wrong.
But what did you do in this
And then-
circumstance that
and
may
then-
have created this
Right.
monster?
And if you say, okay, you tell me what you did wrong, you can turn to the other person and say, is that accurate? And they usually like, yeah. And it's like, now your turn. You tell me what you did
Yeah.
wrong.
Mhm.
Ask the other person, is that accurate?
One thing I've done with my kids who have the most trouble with each other in just little bickery troubles are usually the most alike.
Oh, isn't
Like,
that the truth
and,
of the world?
And they're the ones who are like as it happens in my home right now, it is the ones who are the most kind of high achiever, kind of they love to be correct. They don't like to get things like those are the two that can just egg each other on to glory like in an amazing way. And it's so subtle. Nothing actually seems provoking, but somehow everyone is provoked. Well, one of the things that I have made them do, which makes me laugh, is I say I'm like making dinner. I'll be like, you two come in here and stand in the kitchen. I'm like, face each other, and they're like 2 feet apart. I'm like, no, you have to stay there until I tell you that you can be done, and I want you to take turns going back and forth complimenting one another. And so then I proceed with cooking dinner while they say, you're really good at drawing things. And then they go back to like, you're really fun to play tag with. And it's like, goes back to, they have to do it until I tell them they've done enough. So it's like the bottomless compliment
That's
thing.
funny.
But the thing that surprised me most about doing that is that it was kind of just off on a wing and a prayer of like, we needed to work through some of this, and I just gave them that job. But the thing that was remarkable to me is how it revealed to me that I didn't understand before that moment how much it was because they were similar.
Alike.
Yeah, and then when it was coming out, the things that they admired about each other, when they were finally being honest about that, I realized that so much of the source of it was like when one says, you're really good at thus and such, and the other one is so flattered.
Yeah.
And I realized it was because they were both really fighting for respect of
Yeah.
the other, because they admire each other a lot.
Right.
And they're
Right.
like, we need, and it really helped them to actually have to give each other compliments, helped them both to know that they actually were admired.
And helps you to get a sort of behind the scenes glimpse into what's going on.
Yes.
Gives you an insight into it.
And you also can tell if someone is not sincerely enjoying their sibling when they're like, you know your colors.
It's funny how
Like,
sometimes,
nope, that's not it. You
sometimes
can do
that
better.
reveals the villain.
You can
doesn't
do
it?
better. You
It's
can,
like,
yeah.
Oh,
One of them's
we
like,
found the stink
one
cloud.
of them's like, you're always, I'm so glad you're my sister. And the other one's like, you have
Finished
a
fourth
bathrobe.
grade.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I see where the heart of the storm is.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. It's funny. But anyways, I liked that one. That's
Yeah,
a technique
that's
that has
So
worked.
anyway, that's our thing. It's like just practicing being the kind of person that doesn't get too easily scandalized or doesn't get too easily
Just being
pushed
a wet
onto
mossy
a
log
side.
on
Yeah.
the internet.
Be a wet mossy log in person.
If the internet can
and
use anything,
virtually.
it is more unstartable fires.
Oh man, it is
The
like a
the
it is-
fires
they need Smokey the Bear alerts all over the
all
internet.
over. Like, do not leave your cigarettes unattended.
Yeah,
Like, do
And
not
actually,
do.
You're not even allowed to start fires right now.
I
in
love.
this month.
I got so tickled by that. With it's well, when you're talking to someone and what the conversation amounts to is basically like, what do you think about me leaving this cigarette butt of a rude comment in that emotional dry bush? You're like,
Maybe not. Maybe not.
follow me closely for 1 minute. Imagine what could be if you didn't. Like, the bush might still be dry, but you would not have started the great fire season of 2017. Like, might be
no.
awesome if you didn't do that thing that you're talking about doing.
But anyway, okay, so recommend. We need to leave off now with a recommend of some sort.
Recommend.
How about now, since it's summery in our neck of the woods,
Mm-hmm.
what's your like go-to summer meal? We promised a week or two ago that we would have settled into like, oh, now the season's changed. Now
Well, we were but
eating-
children. We were but children always said that. We didn't know. We did not know what it was going to be like. Well, tonight, since we're going to the river, we're doing really whatever I can rummage
Sure, but
up.
like, what's something that you guys like eating in the summertime?
Did you have a hot tip for this?
You were gonna do it. I'm sure that
I
you have
wasn't.
something.
This was your idea. I'm sure I do make things, but I struggle.
Really? You still blanking out on this? Okay.
No.
I've got one that we adore.
Okay,
It's
do it.
caramelized pork tacos with a
sounds good.
pineapple cucumber salsa.
Okay.
And it is not hard to make, and it is insanely good. And it has like a sriracha
good.
sauce that you squeeze over the top. And you just caramelize the pork. You like pan fry pieces of the pork, and then you throw some water and sugar in at the end. Some fish sauce, kind of gives it that little bit of...
Yum.
Yeah.
Where is
Anyway,
this recipe from?
I don't know, but I will post a link when
Good.
we get around to it, because it's really yummy. And the salsa is really quick to whip up. It's like red onions and pineapples and
Right.
cucumbers, and then you put the sriracha sauce on top, and that I think you cut it with sour cream. It's like, it's like a sour cream and sriracha mix, and you
Yeah,
put that on
that
top.
sounds
It is
yummy.
ridiculously good. It's easy.
We
It's
like,
really fresh, and
Yeah, we
my
like
kids are crazy for it.
Vietnamese chicken salad. That's really good. And then also there's another one. Your fish sauce reminded me of one that Thai beef tacos is really good.
Oh,
It's like a
okay.
grilled. It's marinated in like chili, like sambal lek and
Mhm.
fish sauce and stuff. And then you do it with like a cabbage slaw,
Ooh, yum.
but it's
So
Thai.
it's similar. It's a similar sort of
Yeah,
thing.
it's Thai beef and slaw, but it is just
But
an
it's a taco?
interesting, different, taco.
All right, we have 2 taco
Tacos
recommends.
and tacos,
Tacos and more tacos.
and then for breakfast you can have a taco. It's actually breakfast tacos. What's really good is a couple of scrambled eggs in a corn tortilla with avocado and sriracha and sour cream. It's delicious.
Really?
Yeah,
I could see
I
that.
could go for a breakfast
get
taco
there.
like that. Yep.
It does sound good.
It is good. So, thank
All
you all for
right.
joining us. We'll
And
see you
we
next
will
time.
See you around.
Yes.
Bye.
Happy summer days.